Thank you.
Come into the adult.
Nice to meet
I'm going to grab my bag so I don't interrupt during.
Thank you for being here with us today. This is going to be wonderful to share with you more of the story of Days for Girls. Some of you have had the opportunity to join us yesterday, so you've heard some of this, and I hope it isn't too redundant for you. I'm really grateful to be here in New Zealand. This is one of those places where those of us who live in the United States think about as a very magical, beautiful place, and I never dreamt I'd actually get here. So this is delightful to be here with you. I'm going to share with you the story of Days for Girls, and I hope you get from it the power of one. And by one, I don't mean me, I mean you. It's been a phenomenal journey in watching the difference people make all over the world. It's been amazing to see the difference it is when you empower a girl. We're going to talk about how this simple, sustainable solution makes such an incredible impact, and I, most of all, have been so surprised at how broad the spectrum of change has been. So let me see if I can get this to work. Nope, I may need Don's help. Thank you. So my background is in part global sustainable development, which means I'm a bit of a science girl. I love looking for solutions, and my whole heart's wish was to find things that would help communities be more able to help themselves. This is a place that I was introduced to while working in Kenya on educational initiatives with the Clay Foundation and our dear friends Jim and Andy Clay. So a dignitary had invited us to visit the slums of Kibera. Now, if you're standing at the edge of the slums of Kibera, it's like looking down at a sea of corrugated, rusty metal. And in each of these dwellings, there are many, many families packed in. And there's no water or sanitation. And you can imagine how we're little water and sanitation. You can imagine how I felt when they asked if we could go to see an orphanage. Now, I love children. Don and I have 6 children and 12 grandchildren, and we adopt as many extras as possible. So we love children. And I was a little worried it would break my heart to see these children in really dire circumstances, but I went because I believe in experiencing the world around us and seeing how we can help. So we went. So imagine this orphanage has 400 children in it. And that's kind of hard to have a community with that many children, isn't it? But it was a special orphanage in that it would offer them the chance to participate in arts and in sports and in a full curriculum. So I was really excited to support it and help. We did solutions like providing them with rocket stoves that could cook with just a little sawdust. They could cook the meals for these 400 children. So the cost of cooking food went from $400 a day to $11 to $12 per day. And the difference could be used for food. And I was really excited about that. In fact, I had decided that I had probably just found my role in life. This was what I was going to do with the rest of my life. I was going to help orphanages be more sustainable. But you know how life does. You notice it sends you down paths that you could never anticipate. So we were told it was, oops. This was the inside of one of the rooms in the orphanage. This is how they slept. They would sleep 2 to 3 on each levels of the bunk. And there, can you tell that there's one set of bunks behind another set of bunks? So to get to the back set of bunks, you would crawl over bunks to get to bunks. And you'd be 2 to 3 in each bunk. And that's going to be important in just a moment. I was helping this orphanage when the post-election violence of 2008 happened. Do you remember this? Do you recall this? There was such violence because the winners were so close in the final count. It was very difficult to know for sure who had won. And many felt that they chose one over the other as far as the count based on tribe and not on actual results. So there was huge riots that happened. And in fact, do you recall one church was filled with people, locked closed and set on fire. It was a horribly violent time. And so this orphanage swelled from a way too crowded 400 to a reported 1,400 children. Now when it's already this crowded, you probably, like me, can't imagine how they fit 1,400 children. And that's when Don and I started getting calls for more food, more water, more resources, far more than our family could help them with, nor even our friends could help with. And one day I got an email and a call, and it said they'd been several days without food and water. And I was heartbroken. I knew these children. I've been helping them for about 1.5 years, and I cared about them. So I literally fell asleep, tossing and turning, and actually a little tearful as I pled for some kind of way to send more funds to feed the children. Don and I were returning in 3.5 weeks. We would be there, and I didn't know how I could help in the meantime. So imagine my surprise when I woke up at 2:30 in the morning with the following going through my head. Have you asked what the girls are doing for feminine hygiene? One, really, I always say, that is not what I was asking. But more importantly, I just went, literally gasped, because I had never thought to ask that even once. I thought about uniforms, I thought about water, I thought about power, I thought about books. I never once thought about feminine hygiene. So I ran to the computer and emailed, not expecting immediate response, because, you know, they don't have cyber cafes everywhere, even Wi-Fi. And the answer came immediately. And the answer was nothing. They wait in their rooms. I tried to picture how you wait in your room when you're stuck in a room with 50 people in these conditions. I kind of just sat there staring at the screen and trying to imagine how you do that. And the answer turned out that they would sit on a piece of cardboard. And because they weren't able to drink or eat very much unless someone thought to bring them a resource, bring them something, then they had very little elimination, so they just sat on their cardboard. That turns out to be a reality for girls all over the world, waiting in their rooms, sitting on cow dung or feathers, or using bark or leaves or trash or mattress stuffing, anything, corn cobs, corn husks, stones, anything just to not have to wait in their room or to have some sort of solution all over the world. What I thought of at that point was that we could have disposable. I could find a nonprofit that maybe gave a reduced price, and then we could have disposable. So I looked around and I found one, and it was only $200 for the 500 girls that needed sanitation. And I found a way to get that scented, but I knew if I wasn't arriving in 3.5 weeks and I sent money for pads and they needed food, they would spend it on food. And that's true for all of us, right? Every one of us would make that choice. So it turns out that that too is true all over the world. Even where I live in the United States, if a family has fallen on hard times and they have to choose between food, shelter, and hygiene, they're going to choose food for their family. And especially women, don't we tend to give more than worry and concern for ourselves? We're going to put everyone before us. And so we made the first washable kits. So I usually say that you have to be with us 6 months before you can see this because it's so embarrassing. And I have to tell you, I was just at the International Rotary Convention in Sydney, and a Kenyan woman was there and came by the booth. And I showed her our first kits, and she said, "Oh, that would not work." So she agreed, it was embarrassing. But our first we made with white, because, of course, because it's sanitary, so it would be white, right? And we made the first pads to look like a pad, because, of course, it's a pad. But they taught us something that in hindsight is very clear, that if it's white and got stained, you wouldn't want that to be a public thing that you display. And so they were sticking them under their mattresses to try to dry them. They didn't have the benefits of sunshine to have antimicrobial property, and importantly, it would be infectious, right? And so that wouldn't work. They taught us that when they walked, if we just had these ribbons in place, that the pad would shift forward and they would look like a man. And gotta fix that. So pockets, we needed pockets for sure. These are the first girls that ever received a kit. And they received these kits, but you can see that they were very happy to receive those kids. They were so overjoyed. What I had learned when I looked to find out who talks to them about reproductive health, who talks to them about what a period is, who talks to them about any of those things, and you know what I was told? No one, but you can do it. You can do it when you're here. And so we did. We learned from the World Health Organization website that that 72% of girls on the African continent, according to their statistic, are sexually exploited before age 12. So we knew that we needed to address that, and we did with our talk. Now, that was a fun thing because we invited Kenyan women to join us, and there was a Kenyan woman that was 21 that had graduated from this orphanage, and she said, as she stood up to speak about exploitation, spontaneously, I assume, she said, "When a boy bother you, I tell you what to do, you tell them zip it. You tell them zip it." The next one got up and she told us about an experience she had being stalked and how she had stood up for that. And I got the opportunity to share with them something I'll share at Ambassador Women's Health Training today, my own experience with having been raped at age 7. And in those moments, we could all be honest and sincere and open. And because of the incredible vehicle that a Days for Girls kit is, we could talk woman to woman, girl to girl. And so they were delighted. We were all felt so warm and connected as they left the room. And this beautiful group of girls smiling said, "Oh, thank you." Because before you came, we had to let them use us if we wanted to leave our room and go to class. I hoped that didn't mean what I thought it meant. I hoped that it didn't, but it did. They explained later that to have the opportunity to have hygiene, that they would have to let the headmaster or the teachers sexually exploit them in exchange for a pad. That also turns out to be true all over the world. All over the world. If we, with Days for Girls, had only been able to help the 10 girls that surrounded me to share that news, everything we've done would have been worth it to me. And instead, how amazing it is, because of volunteers and supporters like you, we have reached a magnitude of an estimated 200,000 women and girls on 75 nations on 6 continents. There are more than 200 chapters and teams also on 6 continents, from this beautiful country to Australia, to Europe, to Canada, and the US, Africa, and South America, Haiti, Puerto Rico, all over the world. Heroes unite to talk about something most of us would rather avoid. Most of us forgot to even ask, like me, who thinks about this? I'm so grateful that one night I was woken at 2:30 in the morning to such a strange, wonderful question. What are the girls doing for feminine hygiene? And how can we free them? Now here's the surprising and wonderful thing. See if we can go the right way. I wanted you to see this newest word cloud that just came up. Now word cloud is data put into words, and the bigger the word, the more respondents there were. Brigham Young University is completing a measurement evaluation of a kit consequences when they receive a kit in Uganda. There were 400 girls at 3 different schools that received it, and the change that it makes in their lives. These are the words they gave of what it was like to go without. These are the things they feel when they have to go without. I felt like that really painted the picture of what I've been told all over the world. We have learned that the poverty cycle can be broken when girls stay in school, haven't we? We know that statistically from many, many places. We also know that these kids allow a girl to stay in school 2.5 months longer. Without them, it is the #1 reason girls fall out of school around the globe. And in fact, sometimes the reason they never got a chance to go to school at all, not because families don't care, but because if you have a son and a daughter and limited educational funds to send someone to school, and one of them has the handicap of not being able to go to school for 2.5 months out of every year, who do you send? If you have tough decisions to take, sending someone with that handicap is a tough decision to make. We can level the playing field. One of my heroes is Dr. Pedro Sanchez. He is one of the world's leading soil scientists, called an ecologist. And he helps crops be more readily productive all over the world. He's wonderful. I have to admit, I think I scared him once at the World Food Prize when I came up to him and, oh, can I get my picture with you? I don't think ecologists get that a lot. My husband had to assure him it was okay, I wasn't stalking him. And after he received his $250,000 prize for having received the World Food Prize, which is the award for that year being honored as a person who made a tremendous impact around the globe to help people not be as hungry, he used that prize in a surprising way. When asked why he designated his $250,000 for girls to be able to go to secondary school, why did he do that instead of more agriculture? This was his answer. An educated girl can have a profound effect on the development of a community, unquote. We have seen that to be true. An educated girl passes that education on to her family. An educated girl is more likely to speak up in her community, more likely to lend her strengths to her community as a whole, and to lift her family and those around her. There's another wonderful hero who also won the World Food Prize, whose name is Catherine Bertini. This extraordinary woman was the head of the World Food Program for many years. And when she got there, she did something that I'll bet, I'm willing to bet, having been around you just a little bit, that you would have done likewise. When she got into the offices, 75% of people were in the offices, 25% were in the field working. She flipped that around and made it 25% in the office, 75% in the field. And she gave the mandate that there can be no reason anywhere that food didn't get to them. I don't care if we have to drop it by airplane, by elephant back, by kayak. I don't care how we have to do it. Let us not have any excuses. Let's get that food to those who need it. And so they did. There are pictures of Catherine on an elephant helping bring food out. She's an extraordinary woman. And this woman, when it came to Afghanistan, she was looking at how can we get more food and hunger reduced in Afghanistan. So she did a survey, and her survey was to ask everyone in the community, if you had more finances, what are the top 10 things you would do with it? She was surprised to find that in that list, for most of the men, not all, 10 of the 10 things, or 9 of the 10 things were for themselves. 1 or none were for their family or their community. Conversely, the women, 10 or 9 things were for their community and their family, and maybe 1 or none for themselves. So she came up with what we have to do is get the finances and the food into the hands of the women. Now, do you know where it was going before? The generals, the Taliban, the leaders will take control of this food, we'll get it to the people, right? Instead, she said, let's get it to the hands of the women. She gave them an enterprise where they made small stoves, kind of like shaped like a big beehive, like a dome, and they would cook the grain, make it into flatbread. They then in turn were turning the grain into food for the community, and then the resources they got were feeding and benefiting the community as well. It was working so well that the Taliban decided, enough of that. Women can no longer own these bakeries. You cannot give it to them. That is not going to cut it. And she stood them toe to toe. This woman who cared only to get food to people said, then there will be no food. It took 1 day, 2 days, 5 days, 8 days, 10 days later, the Taliban said, okay, they can have their bakeries. Extraordinary woman, and there are more stories of the amazing Catherine Bertini. But her story exemplifies, what do you think she used her $250,000 for? She used it to create bathrooms for girls, because they were saying that girls couldn't go to school because they needed to have their own bathroom. It was not permitted to share with a boy. And so she used hers for bathrooms for girls so they could stay in school, because she too knows from around the world how important it is to keep girls in school. The Days for Girls kits last 2 to 3 years. That's 2 to 3 years of dignity, more health, more education, more opportunity, more work that a woman can work to feed her family. 2.5 years of not having to use things that cause infection. That's phenomenal. The day that we learned that they last 2.5 years, we got a call or email from a school in PC, Kenya, who said, our kits have worn out, we need more. And it was just a shade under 3 years. Instead of being sad on that day, we celebrated. Woohoo! We know how many years they last. 3 years for a Days for Girls kit. It was the first among many reports. And of course, matters how they care for it. So how is it working? Now, many of you have seen this. Now, what's interesting, do you see how much this is similar in style to our first kit? You know, we went through 23 different styles, and we listened to their feedback as they taught us what did work, what didn't work, and why this works. It's rather ingenious. It was in response to things like their water needs and their drying time needs. And importantly, they taught us that they couldn't hang something out that looked like a pad. And that makes sense, because who of us would want to hang a pad in our front yard, right? They needed it to not look like a pad. How do you make a pad not look like a pad? And the answer is, ta-da! It looks like a handkerchief or a face cloth, and it folds. When you fold it in 3, you get 6 layers of absorbency. Has a thicker layer on the inside and 2 layers on the inside and only 1 on the outside, so that they could layer as many as they need and not have it bulk up in the pockets when they put it into the pockets. It turns out that listening to their wisdom did a lot more than making it accessible for them. It also made it that this washed with 1/4 the water that this style did. That this, of course, dries faster. And this helps them in areas where tsetse flies or similar flies are that lay their larvae or eggs into things that are moist. And if it's still moist, you're in danger of larvae going into you and coming out whenever they feel like it. Which I don't know about you, that's one of the greatest, not wanting to happen kind of things that you could experience in one of those places. Okay, so listening to their wisdom led to them working even better. So today, as you know, now is this a New Zealand distribution or Australian? It's to Madagascar. So it's Australian.
No, we didn't see.
So this is a group in Madagascar, and they're receiving kits. And today, people like you travel all over the world taking kits with them. Guess what else is happening now? People all over the world are learning to make their own. That's important, because these kits come not only with the kits themselves and all the opportunity, dignity, and important health that they bring, but they also come with education. So they're learning more about, they're learning what a period is. They're learning about women's health issues that frankly in a lot of parts of the world no one talks about. It's either taboo or no one shared it, and it's very relatively stigma or complete taboo depending on where you are in. And we can't really blame that, because is it a little bit taboo here? Sure is in the United States. We would rather talk about diarrhea than menstruation, right? And the truth is, if we had already been talking about this, we'd be done, wouldn't we? Because this is one of the things we can change. There are a lot of things in the world that you have to chip away at, but this one we can do. And having it come with conversations about health and women's issues is powerful. And in fact, this is such a great portal to those conversations. We have seen phenomenal changes happen, and some important partners are stepping up because they want that conversation as well. I can share with you some examples of groups who are sewing them where they are and what we're up to next. Right now, we're up to changing the opportunities and access of these kids by making hubs possible that bring in the resources for making the kits, teach them how to be made, and send them out to sewing enterprises that can make them and teach about women's health. Why does that matter? I can tell you about an incredible woman. I got to share with some of these ladies yesterday. She's from Kenya. She was sent by her chief to study ambassador women's health training, and she was only 16, which is young to send someone to represent your whole community, right? But really beautiful, statuesque Kenyan woman. She speaks 4 languages, French, English, Swahili, and her tribal dialect. She is just really charming. So it came to the point where we just talked about what a period is, right? And she went up to the director of Days for Girls Kenya, Julie, and said, for the last 2 years, I thought I had AIDS. And it was only a period. Quote, and this part, quote, because of the stigma of AIDS, I told no one, unquote. I don't know about you, but that just says so much. It says that she's knowledgeable, that she knows about health issues, but no one had ever talked about periods. And so she had feared she'd had AIDS. If you are an orphan and you are responsible for your siblings and you start having a period and you don't know what it was, everything we think about blood is injury and pain and not a good thing. And so often a young orphan girl will assume that she's next, that she now has AIDS, and that she has to figure out a way to care for her siblings because then she'll be gone too. And she didn't have to have that worry because, of course, without periods there'd be no people. Periods are actually a wonderful, dynamic, amazing things that humans are able to do, and specifically women. And we need to free the whole world from the trauma and stigma and shame and fear that comes with not knowing. And we can by empowering local awareness and knowledge and discussions. This is these kids free. Do you think I'll get this eventually? So we're finding that nurturing local leadership is really key. And that too is working. Because guess what? This kind of knowledge is contagious. Everyone starts talking about it when they find out how simple and beautiful and easy it is to understand what a period is. And that there's a solution that will last. It is also simple. So this is Gotsu. She's one of my favorite things to share about. She's the second from the left, and she's from Zimbabwe. Now often one of the bad things about distributing kits, the wonderful thing is when they cheer, and it's as if you brought gold. How many of you experienced this and been on a distribution so you know how incredibly grateful they are, right? It's amazing. And so imagine, in fact, I think I'll tell you, when we were in Kisii, Kenya, once I was at a deaf school, it's one of my favorite examples. And they were introducing us, all of us, and you know, in Africa, frequently they're so good at being long on ceremony and introducing each person and who they are, and where they're from, and what they represent. So they were doing that, and there were 10 of us. So the girls, who are teenagers after all, would go, hello, we were told this was hello, and cheer. And so when they got to, and then they told them they signed what we had brought. And the first one I recall is all the eyebrows shot up. And then the whole room, eyebrows shot up. And then it was the best cheer I'd never heard. It really was. It was just an amazing moment. And the bad part of distributions is sometimes you come and you only have a few. And then there's all these girls and women who can't get them. And they tell you about the horrible consequences of not being able to. The consequences of being exploited or missing opportunity or sitting in a dark room with no resources and all the words that you saw that go along with that and feelings. And so this is Gotsu, and she was in one of the communities where we distributed kits, but there were far more women and girls that showed up than we could possibly give kits to a magnitude of probably 8 or 9 times, right? And so we were really sad as we could only leave materials. We had to leave and couldn't complete the kits for them, but we had just taught some of them how to make them. Now you don't know for sure when you leave a community like that if someone will pick up the ball and run, right? Especially when it's spontaneous and you weren't there very long. So when the Days for Girls Zimbabwe team and director came back, Linda Guza, she asked, did someone make the kits? And can I meet with those that did? And they directed her to 12-year-old Gotsu. And they asked her about how it had gone and how she'd done it and how it had been, what kind of experience, and how did she successfully do this. And then they asked her how she felt. And she said, I am no longer an orphan. I am a leader of women. Okay, this is a recent distribution that happened in Uganda. It was only maybe a month ago now. And it was at a school where they were teaching them how to make the kits themselves and how to do training about health and hygiene. And as you can see, this girl said, and this is through a translator, I'm happy to have a reusable pad that I don't have concerns about because the disposal pads that I used to use were not reliable. They could slip off over time. Days for Girls reusable pads are so good. I'm really happy to know how to make the pads. I'm so blessed because Days for Girls came. This is the cooler, and at the same training school. I always use cloths for toilet tissue. Now, is toilet tissue the same there as it is here? But toilet tissue is a little bit soft after some time. The toilet tissue becomes full and causes pain and burning. And when I used to use the cloth, I wasn't sure which material to use. Some materials can cause burning and hurt me so much. These ones weren't good because of problems. I had no options. I would use it, but wouldn't be comfortable in public, and I would always be standing because if I sit down, I might get stains. And I'm very happy because of the skills I got to make reusable pads. Now if I'm in my Mincy, I'm safe and secure because I know that even if I go in public, I won't have stains on my clothes. Secondly, I used to be so worried if I was about to get my menstruation because I wasn't sure where I would get the money for toilet tissue. But now I'm happy because I know I'm safe, because I know I have a reusable kit that I can use for 3 years. It can also be a way I can earn a living if I start making it and selling it. This is Aber, and she explained, I used to have a lot of problems when I had my menstrual cycle. I used to have a lot of difficulties because I'm an orphan, so I'm not able to afford pads. When I was menstruating, I used to use cloth at times to stir. Have you seen the cloth there? So the cloth is like the last thing it can be used for. It looks like cheesecloth, right? It's very porous, it's very harsh and chafing because it's like a towel that's been used for every other usage or a cloth that's been used for. It was really affecting my life because if I was menstruating, I could just hide. And I appreciate you coming because I realized that now I will be free and even stay with people if I'm menstruating because I don't have to worry about leaking. I could just stay with people. I've also used the skills that DFG taught in order to earn a living. I will start a business of making and selling reusable menstrual kits in my community and earn money. This will allow me to take care of my siblings. The challenge that I will have is capital to start the business. The reusable pads are really important to the women in the village where I stay because most women don't have money to buy pads. I appreciate you coming a lot because it's given me hope for the future. I had lost hope, thinking that I wouldn't be able to do anything, but now I have hope for the future again. That's just a few of the many. So we have seen the impact to distributing these kits, having done everything from having women stand up to exploitation and child trafficking to FGM. And this is a community when